We were late, and the car was already full when we arrived. Richard didn't even blink, just opened the passenger door and slid in beside his sister, leaving me standing there, waiting. Natalie laughed from the back. "Guess you're with Ethan," she said, her voice teasing but innocent. I froze. Ethan leaned over, his arm draped across the last seat. "Come on, Claire. I don't bite. Unless you ask." I laughed too brightly too quickly. "Right. No other option, I guess." I climbed in careful, slow. My dress rode up as I settled awkwardly on his thighs, and I felt the firmness of his legs beneath me like heat through fabric. The door slammed shut. Just like that, I was on my husband's son's lap, surrounded by chatter and oblivious laughter. My hands gripped the seat in front of me, knuckles white. Ethan shifted slightly beneath me, adjusting. The motion brought me closer, just enough for his chest to touch my back. "Comfortable?" he asked, voice low near my ear. I nodded without turning. "Sure. This is normal." He chuckled, the sound vibrating against me. "You smell like lavender. It suits you." My throat went dry. I kept my eyes on the window on the moving highway. My pulse kicked hard under my skin. He rested his hands lightly on either side of my hips, nothing overt, just steadying himself, or maybe me, as the car took a turn. Richard was up front, talking about real estate with his sister. Not once did he look back. I tried not to breathe too deeply. Ethan's breath was slow, warm against the side of my neck. I told myself it was the cramped space, the closeness, that made this feel like more than it was. The road bumped, my body shifted. I reached for balance, hand landing instinctively on Ethan's thigh. His muscle tensed under my palm. I pulled away, flustered, but not fast enough. He leaned in again. "You're tense." "I'm fine," I said too quickly. "You don't look fine." I didn't respond. My heart was too loud. I focused on the voices around us, the music, anything else. But the air felt different now, thick, full of things unspoken. The sun was setting. Light poured in, golden and soft, brushing over my legs, his hands still barely touching. I could feel the heat of his body through my clothes. I hated how aware I was of him. I hated even more that I didn't shift away. "Crazy how families work, huh?" he murmured. "What do you mean?" He waited a beat. "Just saying. Everyone's playing parts. But no one really knows what's going on under the surface." I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the edge of his profile. "That's a pretty cynical view." "Is it?" He smiled. I could feel it. Or maybe just honest. The car hit another dip. My body jolted. His arm came around me instinctively, firm, catching my waist. I didn't protest. I didn't move. For a long moment, we just sat like that, his hand on my side, my spine stiff, my breath shallow. Then he let go, and I missed the pressure immediately. Natalie was telling some story about a coworker cheating, laughter rising in waves. I forced a smile. Richard still hadn't looked back. Ethan shifted again, subtly this time, and I felt him exhale near my hair. "You ever feel like you're watching your own life from the outside?" His words hit somewhere too real. I didn't answer. The rest of the ride passed in a blur of motion and silence. When the car finally pulled into the gravel driveway of the vacation house, I stood up quickly, brushing my skirt down with shaking fingers. I didn't look at Ethan, but as I stepped out, I heard his voice behind me, soft, meant only for me. "Next time, maybe don't pretend you didn't feel that." My breath caught. I didn't turn around. Just kept walking, legs unsteady, heart crashing like a drum against my ribs. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't afraid of being caught. I was afraid I didn't want to stop. The house was bigger than I expected, old wood. Too many rooms and not enough noise to fill the silence. Richard unpacked in the main bedroom without asking if I wanted help. Ethan's room was right across from ours. I noticed that the moment I walked past it. Dinner was loud. Wine, music, small talk. I smiled when I was supposed to. I watched Richard more than I spoke. He talked work. He always did. Even on weekends meant for family. His hand never found mine. Not once. Ethan sat across from me. His eyes held mine a beat longer than they should have each time. I caught myself reacting and hated that I liked it. After 2 glasses of wine, I excused myself. The house was too warm, or maybe I was. I wandered into the kitchen and leaned against the counter, letting the cool marble calm my skin. A moment later, I heard steps. I didn't need to turn. "You always this quiet?" he asked. "You always this observant?" I answered, softer than I meant to. He came closer, not touching, just present. "You don't talk much when he's around." He doesn't notice either way. I notice. I didn't respond. My robe shifted slightly when I moved, and I suddenly felt aware of every inch of skin it didn't cover. Ethan stepped to the side, opened a cabinet like he lived there. Looking for tea? Something warm, I said, voice lower now. He handed me a mug and leaned next to me, his arm brushing mine. I didn't move. I sipped slowly, trying to ground myself. He smelled faintly of soap and pine. I hated that I noticed. He didn't look at me when he spoke next. He treats you like furniture. Polished. Present. But invisible. I stared at the liquid in my mug. That's not fair. It's honest. We stood there in silence. My pulse refused to settle. He finally looked at me, really looked. I met his eyes for a second too long. Then I turned. I should go back to the room. You don't want to. I stopped walking. He was behind me. I didn't move, didn't answer. His voice dropped. You keep pretending this isn't happening. What do you think is happening, Ethan? I think you haven't been touched the way you need in years. The room felt suddenly small. I turned halfway, enough to see his expression, serious, unreadable. My hands tightened on the mug. I set it down before I dropped it. You don't get to say that. Then why are you still standing here? I didn't have an answer. I hated that he was right. I hated that he could read me so easily. I hated that part of me liked being seen. I turned fully now. You're a kid compared to me. I'm not your husband. That's all that matters. His words hit deep, sharp and unforgiving. I stepped back, almost bumping the table. He didn't move forward. He just waited. That was worse. I managed to walk away finally. My hand shook when I opened the door to our bedroom. Richard was already asleep. He hadn't noticed I'd been gone 20 minutes. I sat on the edge of the bed, still hearing Ethan's voice in my head. I looked at the mirror across the room and saw someone I didn't quite recognize, flushed, unsettled, alive in a way I hadn't been in months. I lay down next to a man who hadn't asked where I was. I stared at the ceiling and let the sound of rain outside muffle the storm I was trying to control inside. At breakfast, I avoided Ethan's eyes. He didn't push. He didn't need to. The damage was already done. I felt his silence more than I would have felt his touch. Every word from Richard sounded distant. The only thing I heard clearly was the memory of Ethan whispering what I hadn't dared to admit. I wasn't lonely. I was starving.
The house felt colder with her husband away. He had left for a 2-day work trip, routine, uneventful, and kissed her goodbye without suspicion. She stood in the doorway after the car pulled out, unsure whether she felt relieved or abandoned. That evening, the silence pressed in. She turned on the radio, then off again. Cooked too much food, then pushed most of it aside. Her thoughts drifted, uninvited, unstoppable, to Elias. When the knock came, she didn't hesitate. She had texted him earlier, nothing suggestive, just, "If you're free tonight, I'm around." He stood on her porch with a bottle of wine and that familiar half-smile. Neither of them said much as she let him in. The door closed with a click that sounded final. They ate in the dim light of the dining room, their conversation careful at first. Safe topics, familiar rhythms. But the pauses grew heavier, the silences deeper. When he reached for her hand across the table, she didn't pull back. The bedroom wasn't lit by candles or music. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, human, real. Their clothes fell away slowly, like layers of hesitation. He kissed her with a kind of reverence, as if afraid she might vanish. Her skin remembered what it meant to be touched with purpose. Afterward, they lay tangled in stillness. She didn't speak. Neither did he. She awoke before dawn, heart pounding, sheets twisted around her. Elias was still asleep beside her, peaceful and bare. She rose quietly, wrapped in a robe, and went to the kitchen. The kettle hissed like it always did. But the sound felt sharper now, cutting through something inside her. She stared at the window, into the darkness beyond. The hill, though far from view, loomed in her mind. The goat stood there again, only now, it teetered near the cliff's edge, wind rippling its fur. Its eyes met hers, not with judgment, but with sorrow. Something in her chest twisted. When Elias emerged, she didn't smile. He came behind her, touched her waist. She flinched, not from him, but from herself. "Should go," he said softly, and she nodded. Later that day, her husband returned. He held a bouquet, white lilies, her favorite, and a small smile. I missed you, he said, and for a moment, the word struck her like a blow. He looked tired, older somehow. But his eyes searched hers with a tenderness that felt almost unbearable. Guilt didn't announce itself. It seeped in slowly, like water under a door. Every look he gave her, every casual touch, felt like a reminder of what she'd broken. The weight of it pressed against her ribcage. Elias texted that night, thinking of you. She didn't respond. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The goat was gone now, disappeared from the hillside of her mind. She couldn't decide if that made her free or completely lost. Weeks passed like drifting smoke, thick, ungraspable. She moved through her days with practiced precision: groceries, laundry, dinner on the table by 6. But everything felt thinner, like the skin over something festering beneath. Her husband tried, in his own quiet way. He brought home flowers again. He suggested weekend plans they used to enjoy. He even pulled her into a slow dance in the living room one evening, laughing nervously when he stepped on her foot. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. His touch no longer filled her. It only reminded her of what she had taken for granted, and what she had risked. Then, one morning, it happened that he found her phone. Not in a dramatic search or heated suspicion, just a glance at a notification that flashed too long. A message from Elias: I missed the way you looked at me. She heard the silence before she saw his face. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He simply handed her the phone, then sat at the edge of the bed, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. She confessed, not because she had to, but because she couldn't keep holding the weight alone. The words came slowly, like stones pulled from her throat. She told him the truth, about the emptiness, about Elias, about how it wasn't love, just something she needed to feel alive again. That he listened. That hurt more than any screaming would have. Later, he packed a bag. No final words, no slammed doors. Just a look, a mixture of grief, fatigue, and something close to acceptance. When the door closed behind him, the house didn't echo. It sighed. Elias reached out again. Called twice. Texted. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. What existed between them had never belonged in the real world. It had lived in the space between loneliness and illusion, and that space had collapsed. She returned to the hillside one morning as autumn crept in. The grass had grown taller, more wild. Wind swept through her hair as she scanned the horizon. No goat. No symbol. No silent companion. For the first time, she didn't look for it. Instead, she sat cross-legged in the field, palms open to the sky. The quiet no longer frightened her. It simply was. She thought of her husband, of the way he had once held her when she cried after losing a painting competition. She thought of Elias, of what he had offered, a mirror, not a future. And she thought of herself, not as the girl in a story, but as someone still writing 1.by the time she stood to leave. The sun had broken through the clouds. She walked back barefoot, feeling each blade of grass, each pebble underfoot. There was no clarity, no neat conclusion, only this: the ground beneath her felt real again, and that, for now, was enough.